expected questions in this area. Okay, what is a web service? Already we know, right? What is a web service exactly? Web service is a piece of code that helps to different systems to communicate and exchange data over the internet. Exactly. Okay. And two types of web services are available. What are those? REST and SOAP. Okay. What is API? API stands for Application Programming Interface. API is a piece of code that will help to different systems, two or more different systems. Exactly. It's not like two systems exactly, two or more systems to communicate and exchange data with each other. Got it? API without internet, a web service is with internet. Exactly. Is that clear? And then maybe a question, what is a REST web service? Okay. See, because these are very, very small, and if you don't know, most of the time they will not ask these questions. What is a web service? What is a REST service? What is a SOAP service exactly? But why I have written these questions here? There is maybe a possibility they may ask exactly. At that point of time, if you don't know, they think that we are not strong in the fundamentals itself. Okay. They may ask you what is a REST web service or what is the difference between REST and SOAP exactly. Okay. Now, what is a REST web service? How to answer that? REST stands for RESTful State Transfer. It follows the HTTP protocol exactly. Okay. And it will accept JSON, XML, HTML, and text plain as inputs. REST uses RAML for documentation. Where do we design it? In Design Center of any point platform. It contains what exactly? Resources, request and response details, security schemes, and documentation. If you answer this is more than enough. Okay, if you go and check any documentation, it will have so much of content you will not be able to answer. See, nobody will expect you to answer the entire content exactly in the interview. They are checking for your knowledge, your understanding. If you tell 2 to 3 lines of proper answer, that is more than enough. As soon as you wanted to start, how to start? REST. It has an abbreviation, right? What do you do? REST stands for representational state transfer. Okay. And it follows HTTP protocol. What are the inputs it will accept? It will accept JSON, HTML, XML, or plain text. This way, if you remember and if you are able to answer that, and it will consist of request, all the request response details, security schemes, and all exactly, then that is more than. Okay. Then what is a SOAP web service? SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol, and you know already it is an XML based protocol, right? Right? And that accepts XML data as an input, and the SOAP uses what? WSDL, Web Service Description Language. Okay, for documentation. Again, it will contain the request response, all those details. SOAP is a platform and language independent. Language independent as well as platform independent. Irrespective of platform and language, it will work exactly.
It is more secure compared to.
Yeah, we'll come to differences exactly. See, most of the time they may ask you what are the differences between that exactly. When to choose REST or when to choose SOAP. Okay, that is the next question. See, till now nobody is going to ask you this kind of question. Okay, but it is very, very important. You know, you need to have at least 2 to 3 lines of answer for your question. Then only you'll be confident. See, if you wanted to answer what is the difference between REST and SOAP, you need to know what is REST and what is SOAP, right? If you wanted to know what is REST and SOAP, you need to know what is a web service. If you wanted to know what is a web service, you wanted to know API. Is that clear? Okay. But I have what to say? Made it very simple and kept very, very less documented and in simple plain English. Okay, fine. Now next. What is the next question? What are the differences between REST and SOAP web services? Okay, already we know that, right? REST stands for representational state transfer and SOAP stands. This is the first point we can. By the time we remember the further answer, we can tell the first point, right? Okay. See, this is the way you need to craft your answer. Okay, right. Next, SOAP is a protocol, whereas REST is an architectural pattern. Okay, SOAP is a protocol, whereas REST is a architectural pattern. Again, SOAP uses WSDL to define API, whereas REST uses RAML. We know all these things, right? Exactly. SOAP works with only XML data format, whereas REST works with JSON, XML, HTML, and plain text. Exactly, data formats. And then SOAP needs more bandwidth than REST. I already told, right? Why it requires more bandwidth? Because you see always same JSON data compare with XML data. XML data is heavier. You'll have opening tag, closing tag, and all exactly. Okay, but JSON is light and human readable, easy to read, easily lightweighted exactly when compared to XML. That's why obviously SOAP needs more bandwidth, means more resources. For example, like a phone, right? For example, like if you not phone, a car with more luggage, it requires more resources with luggage. Without luggage, it requires less resources, right? Means less power. Basically, we can compare that kind of situation. Okay, now SOAP cannot make use of REST, but REST can make use of SOAP or HTTP protocol. See, I have written almost like some 8 to 9 points here. If you can answer 3 to 4 points, that's more than enough. Okay, and SOAP uses services interfaces to expose business logic, whereas REST uses URI. Whenever you try to use web service consumer, you can see operations, right? Drop down. Those are interfaces exactly. Okay, whereas REST URI. Okay, now SOAP defines its security. Okay, REST inherits from underlying transport. For REST services, there is no separate security exactly, including inclusive security, but SOAP has its inclusive security. See, don't go into depth of this particular thing. Just remember this. This may be a possible question. It's not 100% question, right? Okay, but you should know exactly. See, SOAP defines its security, whereas REST inherits from underlying transport. See, obviously, we have a layers, right? 7 layers while transporting the data exactly from one system to another system. In that transport layer, whatever is the security defined, that particular security will be used by REST. But SOAP can define its own security. That's what the meaning is exactly. SOAP is less preferred over REST because of its complexity. Right? Is that clear? How many points are there? Almost 3, 6, 9 points are there. At least 3, 4 points we can easily remember, right? Okay, fine. Now, next question. When to choose REST and when to choose SOAP? Okay. REST is more popular choice for modern web services due to its simplicity and flexibility. Exactly. Okay. However, there are certain instances. Exactly. What are those certain instances? SOAP remains relevant for specific use cases requiring strong security and standardized communication. Whenever you want to go for a strong secured application, right? Then SOAP is the first choice exactly, not the REST. Okay, REST. With the REST service, you know already caching is possible. We can mention that point also in the difference, right? With SOAP, caching is not possible, right? Whenever there is a requirement for caching, can we go for REST? Okay, even that also can be part of your thinking process. See, whenever you wanted a simple service, then you can go for REST exactly. Whenever you wanted to go for a complex kind of implementations as well as more secured applications, then go for SOAP. And you can tell this also. See, maybe if there is a scenario, there is a requirement for caching, do you go for SOAP or REST? Then you can clearly say that I should choose REST service as SOAP will not support the caching process exactly. Is that clear? Okay, fine. Now, immediately as REST comes in, immediately what is the next thing we'll encounter? URI parameters and query parameters, right? Right? Yes or no? And see, you know the definition for URI parameters and query parameters. When to go for when? What? When to go for URI parameter, when to go for query parameter. That is the most important thing you should understand exactly. Okay, fine. What are query parameters? Query parameters are used to filter, sort, and paginate the collection of a result. exactly. Okay, already we know, right? What is filtering, what is sorting, what is paginating, right? Whenever those three kind of instances are there, then we'll go for query parameters, exactly. And they're passed at the end of the URL after a question mark, right? And for example, accounts in active state slash accounts question mark status is equal to active. If they ask you an example, okay, there is a bank and we wanted to extract all the active accounts. What is that you're doing? You're filtering it, right?
Yes.
You can use this, right? This example. Frame one example and keep it in your mind. I told here one example as whenever you wanted to extract all the accounts from active accounts from database, for example, I can use a query parameter saying status equal to active. If I pass that query parameter and I can fetch the details exactly. Now, what are URI parameters? URI parameter stands for URI stands for unique resource identifier. First of all, you can establish the abbreviation. You can tell the abbreviation part, and it is passed as a parameter in the URL, and it identifies a unique instance of a resource type. Okay, it should be a unique identifier. For example, I wanted to fetch the details of an employee, okay, with employee ID 100. Whether any other employee will have the same employee ID? No, right?
No.
Okay. Now he's unique for that particular table or resource, right?
Yes.
Exactly. In that instance, you need to go for URI parameter. And what is the syntax?
Flower.
Flower braces, exactly. Curly braces. I have taken here customer ID. For a bank, customer ID is unique, right?
Yes.
Yes or no? Okay. That for that reason, I took for a bank, I took it as a customer ID as unique, and I have given the example here. Now, can you see the difference? Okay, you can tell that with the help of example, you need to tell the difference between them. Okay, whenever you wanted to filter, sort, or paginate, go for query parameters. Whenever you wanted to find the unique resource of an identity of a resource, then go for URI parameter. This is still confusing for so many developers. In our companies also, like 4 5 years experienced people, sometimes for URI parameter they'll select query parameter, for query parameter they'll select URI parameter, exactly. Okay, but be clear. Okay, fine. Now you understood, right? What are the differences between query and URI parameters, when to choose what exactly. With the same examples you can try to explain the differences. Now, what are the different HTTP methods used? Okay, this is for sure they'll ask this question exactly. Okay, most of the time, at least if they don't ask like what are the different HTTP methods you used, they may pick up 1 or 2 codes and ask what is the significance of this particular response code. Okay, in my experience, whatever the codes are there, sorry, methods, right? Sorry, we are talking about methods, right? HTTP methods. We'll discuss that and then we'll go to the status codes exactly. What are the different HTTP methods you have used? Immediately, see, there are so many in the as per the rest exactly, if you observe. But what are the most used ones? These are the most used ones: get, post, put, patch, delete. Okay, other than these I haven't used any other method also till now. There are so many headers, so many methods apart from these 5. Okay, fine. When to use get? To fetch the available resources, exactly. Okay, post to create a new resource. And what is the status code for it? 201. And put to completely update a resource or create a new resource if it doesn't exist. If it is existing, it will completely update that, exactly. If it doesn't exist, it will create it. Okay, in that kind of instance it will go for put. I have clearly shown that in our project, right? Project discussion, if you understand. Okay, when post, I have shown you the difference between post and put there, exactly. Now patch, whenever there is a requirement for a partial update, then we'll go for a patch. Okay, delete, to delete a resource. Okay, see, is it mandatory to follow the rules and regulations of this kind of thing? No, it's not, but it is suggestible. Okay, it is not mandatory to follow the same as specified, but it is the best practice and widely followed. It will avoid confusion for the consumer of APIs. Is that clear so far? Any questions so far?
Yeah, Mahesh,
Yes, please.
I have one question. Recently asked the interviewer, for suppose
Okay.
a client asking only 500 status code and error message without mention HTTP listener for a error response. Is any
Mhm.
other way to show response status code?
No, can you repeat the question?
Like client asking, suppose we have client asking only 500 status code and error
Okay.
message without mention HTTP listener error response.
HTTP, you can send it in the response, right?
They're asking like I'm saying like that only. Is any other way to show the response
No,
status
see,
code?
yeah, response status code. Actually, you can show it in the here exactly. If you open the
Okay.
Postman, it
Okay.
is already defined by default. Exactly. I think my studio is not open. What happens? There are two things in the Postman. If you whenever you receive the response,
Okay.
just give me a second. See here, you are getting 200 and okay.
Yes. Yes.
HTTP status code and reason phrase. Okay, these are the two things which will represent your response exactly. Okay, whenever you don't define anything, automatically MuleSoft default error handler will try to form the status code as well as the reason phrase. This is called status code. This is called reason phrase. See, if you don't mention anything, who will take care of it? MuleSoft default error handler.
Okay.
Okay, is that clear?
Yeah,
Yes.
Mahesh,
Yes.
can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
I think he's asked if there is any way we can pass the error status code not from the HTTP listener. If not from the HTTP listener, is there any chance, any component?
Even I am not sure. If there is any answer from the audience, you people can tell.
Okay, Mahesh, fine.
Do you have an answer? Okay, fine. Yeah.
I think nobody knows it. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, that's fine. We'll proceed. Yeah, exactly. See here, we have a status code and reason phrase. Exactly. MuleSoft will automatically handle that. Exactly. Okay, fine. Now, see, now immediately these are the questions which will be encountered in methods exactly. What is the difference between put and patch, post and put, and these are the two differences exactly most of the time. Or put, post, and patch. You need to be very, very clear about this exactly. Already we know, right? Post is used whenever you wanted to go for a creation of a new resource completely, right? There is no resource at all. You wanted to create a new resource, then you can go for a post one. Okay. Whenever you wanted to go for a kind of operation, if there is an resource, you wanted to completely update it, or if it is not available, you wanted to create, then in that kind of instance, you need to go for put. Whenever you wanted to update a resource partially, then you go for patch. You need to clearly define these differences exactly. Is that clear? Okay, fine. Now, and explain some of the HTTP response codes used. Okay, they may ask you this way, or they may pick up some random codes, 3 4 codes, and they will ask you in the interview exactly. Okay, see now, obviously HTTP response codes are used to indicate the status of a request made to a server, right? Obviously, what are the different response codes exactly? I have 100 series, 200 series, 300 series, 400 series, 500 series. I already told you 100 and 300 I have never used in my journey also. Okay, 100 and 300. But understand, 100 is informational response exactly. 300 is for redirection. Whenever you discarded the old resource and you want to redirect to the new one exactly from the old resource to new resource, then you will go for redirection exactly. But still, we are not using that. Now, what all the other things which will be useful? 200 and 200, 400 and 500. 200, 400 and 500, right? In 200 also, how many are there? If you understand, there are three things: 200, 201, 204. 200, okay. When we use this exactly, the request was successful, completely processed exactly, and you got the response. Okay, at that point of time, we will try to use 200, okay. 201, whenever you send a post, then you will use 201. But I have seen most of the projects they go for 200. But it is always better to know this kind of status codes exactly. 204, you wanted to fetch the content, but the content is not available. It is successful only, but there is no content. Then you can go for 204, no content. Got it? Now 400, bad request. 401, unauthorized. 403, forbidden. Now they may ask you, what is 403 forbidden? Already we know 401, 400, almost like we have seen in the project explanation, right? Exactly. Yes or no? It's very clear. Because whenever we pass the wrong credentials, then we'll get 401 unauthorized exactly. 400 bad request whenever you are trying to send the request in a undesired format. Undesired format, then it is known as 400 bad request exactly. Okay. 403 forbidden. See, what happens is, for example, like you have access to one resource and you don't have access to another resource. Okay, the server understood the request, but that particular consumer is not authorized to use the other resource. In that kind of instances, we'll use 403 forbidden. Okay, see here, the server understood the request, but the user is not allowed to access the requested resource. That is the reason we're not processing it and giving it to him exactly, giving the response to them. Now 404 not found. The requested resource is, if it is not available on the server, right, then this kind of error will come. Now 405, method not allowed. Whenever you have sent get for post method or post for get method, these kind of instances, method not allowed will come. 409, a request conflict with the current state of the target resource. 409, what happens is, for example, like there is a unique instance exactly. For example, like a customer ID is there, customer ID creation, a new customer is onboarding, and you gave the same customer ID to the new customer also. Now there, that particular table will not accept that particular new customer ID, right? Because it is duplicate, and we told that for every customer only single customer ID, it should be different for unique for each and every customer. Now there is a conflict, right? In that kind of instances, you need to send that 409 conflict. Okay, whenever you are trying to send a duplicate resource and the system is not accepting, at that point of time we'll try to send a 409 conflict. Okay, fine. Now 415, unsupported media type. We already know that for instead of JSON XML is sent, or instead of JSON CSV is sent, or instead of CSV JSON is sent. In that kind of instances, we'll be getting unsupported media type exactly. 415 and 429. When do we get 429? Tournament request. Whenever there is a rate limiting policy and the consumer is exceeding the specified limit, then you'll get the 429 tournament request exactly. Okay, there may be a question when there is a rate limiting exceeded, what is the status code you will be encountered, then you can tell 429. Okay, fine. Now again 500 series, we finished our 200, 400, and we came to 500 series exactly. right? 500 internal server. See, I asked some status code. Okay, at least if you can tell 3, 4 right, that is more than sufficient, and immediately the interviewer will be passing to the next question. But to tell 3, 4, you need to be confident about all these things, right? Well, for example, like I straight away came and asked for 409 or 429 exactly. You should be able to understand that, and you should be able to explain that, right? For that reason, we are discussing all the status codes here. Now 500 series, right? 500 internal server. The server encountered an error while processing the request. Whenever there is a problem from the server side, for example, if there is some database is down or the system is down, okay, in that kind of, the system means the underlying systems are down. Okay, in that kind of instances, what happens? You will be giving the 500 internal server. Okay, and 501 not implemented. See, the server does not support the functionality required to fulfill the request. Exactly. The server itself is not supporting that particular functionality. Okay. In that kind of instances, 501 will be getting it. And bad gateway. See, obviously, as we discussed, whenever we receive a request, there will be a gateway in between. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. The gateway is not getting the response from the upstream server. Gateway is a separate server. Again, honestly speaking, gateway is again a separate server, and your application server is there. Once gateway approves the request, then only the actual request goes to the application server, and it will be processed, and then it will gateway will receive the response, and the response will be sent back to consumer. But here, the gateway itself is not receiving the response from the upstream server. At that point of time, 502 bad gateway. 503 service unavailable. The service is currently unavailable and the request cannot be completed at this time. If your application is down, is not running, at that point of time, you'll be getting 503 service unavailable. If you observe one more time also, when auto discovery is enabled, and in your local also you'll be getting this error. Enabled and you deploy the application, but still application will be deployed and you will not be receiving the response. At that point of time, you need to pass the parameter API platform gatekeeper. In any point platform gatekeeper as disabled, or you can comment the auto discovery ID. In any of the things can be done, then only you'll be able to consume the response from the API. Exactly. Now, see, 504 gateway timeout. The server acting as a gateway or proxy. Okay, gateway already you know, right? Gateway is there. Did not receive a timely response from the times upstream server. For example, in gateway we told that for this particular request I need to get the response in 300 milliseconds. Okay, but the upstream server is not giving in 300. Immediately, generally whenever HTTP requester will get HTTP response timeout, right? The same way here 504 gateway timeout. In gateway also you can mention it exactly. Okay, that way these are the status codes. Any questions so far?